Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're taking a super energetic dive into the world of Jane Austen. And look, we aren't just treating her like some dusty historical figure. We're going to break down exactly why her 1811 debut novel, Sense and Sensibility, is a brilliantly sharp, deeply relevant social critique that absolutely matters in 2026. It's not just a cozy romance. It's practically a survival manual for a society that judges your every single move.
Now, you might be asking yourself, what on earth does a centuries-old story about high teas, empire waist dresses, and proper English society have to do with the viral cultural conversations we're having online today? Well, the answer is pretty much everything. The aesthetics have changed, sure, but underneath it all, we're still endlessly debating how women ought to behave, how to balance our emotions, and how to navigate an economy that, frankly, often feels totally stacked against us.
Section 1. Demure versus Brat in 1811. Okay, let's dive into this.
Austen's character designs literally map perfectly onto the internet slang we're using right now. First up, we've got Eleanor Dashwood. She represents sense. She's careful, she's super considerate of societal expectations, and incredibly mindful. Honestly, she's the ultimate demure energy. And then we have her sister Marianne, representing sensibility. Marianne is spontaneous, unapologetically messy, and prone to these massive, high-octane emotional outbursts. She is pure brat energy. To really get this, we kind of have to rewind and see what these words meant back in the 18th century. Sense wasn't just about being book-smart. The Enlightenment heavily championed sense as the ultimate virtue of reason, logic, and propriety. It was all about your capacity to make sound judgments. But here's the key. As we see with Eleanor, it didn't mean you were a robot who lacked emotion. It meant you had the incredible mental fortitude required to govern your strongest feelings, for your own sake and for the people around you.
Now, on the flip side, we had the cult of sensibility. This was a massive cultural movement that basically said, hey, let's celebrate overwhelming, spontaneous feelings over cold, hard facts. Sensibility meant you felt the beauty and the pain of the world deeply. But as Austen points out through Marianne, prioritizing absolute passion and unthinking action over societal expectations, that could be incredibly dangerous and even lead to total ruin in such a highly structured world.
Section 2. The Dashwood Sisters' Dilemma. Let's move on and see how this builds.
So, this personality clash quickly turns into a really intense survival situation. The plot kicks off with a devastating inciting incident. The patriarch, Mr. Henry Dashwood, dies. And because of these strict primogeniture laws, which meant property only went to male heirs, the family estate passes entirely to their wealthy half-brother. In a literal instant, Eleanor, Marianne, their sister, and their mother are stripped of all their wealth and status. They're left in absolute, dire financial ruin and forced to move to a modest little place called Barton Cottage. Suddenly, their personality types, their sense and sensibility, are put to the ultimate test just to survive.
Section 3. Love, Money, and Marriage.
Now, what's really interesting about this era is that these financially ruined sisters have to navigate a society where marrying for love is a luxury they simply can't afford. During the Regency period, for the upper and middle classes, marriage really wasn't a romantic milestone. It was practically a mandatory business transaction. For women in particular, who were legally barred from making their own fortunes, securing financial independence meant you had to marry into it. Austen perfectly captures that agonizing tension between wanting a soulmate and, well, needing to pay the bills.
We see this exact tension play out with their suitors. First, there's Edward Ferrars. He's honorable, but maybe has a bit too much rigid sense since he's bound by duty to a past secret engagement. Then there's John Willoughby. He's handsome, passionate, indulging in pure sensibility, but ultimately, he's an unscrupulous fortune hunter who ditches Marianne for an heiress. And finally, Colonel Brandon. He's older, a bit staid, but immensely loyal, honorable, and crucially, wealthy. The sisters have to figure out who is actually genuine and who's just playing the societal game.
Section 4. Secrets, Satire, and Manipulation.
Playing this societal game is exactly what Austen explores next, and she uses her pen like a scalpel. Just listen to this caustic quote about the antagonist, Lucy Steele. Austen writes that her behavior is an example of what an unceasing attention to self-interest will do in securing every advantage of fortune with no other sacrifice than that of time and conscience. It's so brilliant. Austen is basically showing us that sense, when you strip away the morality, just becomes cold, calculating manipulation.
Characters like Lucy Steele and the matriarch Mrs. Ferrars actually succeed in this cutthroat world precisely because they treat human connection as nothing more than a profitable trade.
Lucy ultimately marries for pure financial gain. Austen uses these antagonists to expose the absolute absurdity of a society that rewards greed while punishing genuine, heartfelt emotion.
Section 5, A Feminist Survival Guide.
And this brilliantly illustrates something else. While she might not have used the exact term herself, Austen was absolutely embedding feminist survival tactics into her stories. Look at the patriarchal reality. Women were treated as commodities, entirely dependent on male relatives for survival. But on the flip side, Austen champions female agency. She shows how characters like Eleanor manage to maintain their integrity, protect their family, and exercise incredible power through quiet endurance, sharp intellect, and self-control. They might not have economic freedom, but they maintain absolute dominion over their own minds.
Section 6, Why Austen Matters Today. Let's look at her timeless legacy.
So how does a book about 19th century inheritance laws remain so culturally explosive today? Just look at this timeline. Back in 1811, it was published anonymously by a lady, and Austen actually had to take the massive financial risk of funding it herself. Fast forward to the late 20th century, and translations, like the 1983 Chinese edition, sparked massive global academic study, proving its universal appeal. That paved the way for the blockbuster 1995 Emma Thompson film, and here we are in September 2026 with a highly anticipated new film adaptation hitting theaters. The reach is just undeniable.
So, the crucial point is this. Austen isn't just mocking sensibility, and she's definitely not blindly championing rigid sense either. The ultimate lesson for the Dashwood sisters, and honestly for us, is finding the balance. Eleanor has to learn how to actually express her feelings, while Marianne has to learn how to temper hers. True wisdom requires a harmony of both the heart and the head.
Austen understood human connection better than almost anyone. There's this beautiful line in the novel. 7 years would be insufficient to make some people acquainted with each other, and 7 days are more than enough for others. It's lines like that which remind us of her profound, totally timeless grasp on human psychology. She saw right through polite society to the messy, passionate, rational humans underneath.
We'll leave you with this thought. The source material makes it pretty clear. Sense without sensibility is cold, calculating, and detached. But sensibility without sense is absolute chaos and self-destruction. As you navigate the complexities of 2026, from internet trends to your most personal relationships, ask yourself, which one are you? And more importantly, how are you going to find your balance? Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer, and keep exploring.